The Edomites are frequently referenced in the Bible as foes of the people of Israel. In fact, in several sections of the biblical text, the Edomites are portrayed as an exceedingly brutal people. However, the history of the Edomites traces back to Esau, the brother of Jacob, the patriarch of Israel. They constituted a robust and warrior-like nation that settled in a rocky, mountainous region south of Israel. But what caused a nation with such close familial ties to Israel to become one of its greatest adversaries? Who were the Edomites, and what transpired in their history over time? Do any representatives of the Edomites still exist today? In this video, you will uncover what is genuinely known about the story of the Edomite people. Before anything else, it's important to grasp that the word Edom translates to red. This term is used in the Bible to refer to Esau, the land of Edom, and the inhabitants of that territory. Essentially, there are three primary explanations regarding the application and meaning of Edom. The first, and most widely accepted by scholars, suggests that the term Edom was associated with Esau and his descendants, in connection with the stew for which he exchanged his birthright. The dish Jacob prepared for him had a reddish hue, but Esau was also described as ruddy, and the use of the term Edom might be tied to this physical trait. The third and final hypothesis regarding the use of the term Edom relates to the geographical features of the area. There are many rocky outcrops and mountains of red sandstone in that region. If this last hypothesis holds true, then it's likely that the land was called Edom even before Esau's descendants inhabited it. Regardless, it is clear that, to discuss the history of the Edomites, we must begin with the central figure of Esau, the patriarch of this people. The Bible tells us that Esau and Jacob were twin brothers, sons of Isaac and grandsons of Abraham, a key figure in the faith. However, despite sharing the same womb, their paths diverged dramatically, resulting in a rivalry that would extend over generations, reflected in the nations that emerged from their descendants: Israel from Jacob and Edom from Esau. The first significant aspect of Esau's life that we must highlight is his choice to trade his birthright for a bowl of lentils. This was an impulsive decision that revealed his disregard for spiritual blessings. In Genesis chapter 25, we read that Esau, exhausted and hungry after a day of hunting, approached Jacob and requested food. Jacob, who understood the value of the birthright, offered him a bowl of lentils in exchange for it. Esau, in his haste and lack of judgment, accepted the deal. This seemingly simple act was, in fact, laden with spiritual significance. In the Hebrew context, the birthright surpassed mere material inheritance and indicated a position of social and spiritual leadership within the family. Furthermore, in the case of the family of the covenant, the birthright also included God's promises to Abraham and Isaac, which would now be upon Jacob. Thus, by neglecting the birthright, Esau demonstrated a lack of regard for God's plan and the spiritual inheritance that could have been his. What occurred was a reversal of spiritual values for immediate gratification. Esau lived for the moment, satisfying his physical desires above eternal realities, and his impulsive, carnal decision shaped not only his personal life, but also the history of his descendants, the Edomites, who followed a path of hostility toward God's people. It is also crucial to note that even before Esau was born, God had already revealed his purpose to choose Jacob. In Genesis chapter 25, when Rebekah felt her twin sons wrestling in her womb, the Lord informed her that there were two nations within her, two peoples that would be divided. One would be stronger than the other, and the older would serve the younger. This was fulfilled in the lives of Jacob and Esau and their descendants. After the incident involving the birthright, the relationship between Jacob and Esau became even more strained when Jacob, following his mother Rebekah's instructions, deceived Isaac to receive the blessing of the firstborn. Esau was furious. The Bible tells us that he grew to hate Jacob and planned to kill him as soon as his father Isaac passed away. Although they later reconciled, Esau and Jacob went their separate ways. Esau chose to settle in the mountainous region of Seir, which would later become the land of Edom. In Genesis chapter 36, it describes how Esau took his wives, children, and all his possessions and left to dwell in a land that was not part of God's promise. The descendants of Esau became the nation of Edom, a people who, throughout biblical history, perpetuated hostility and conflict against Israel. Though they were brothers in an ethnic sense, spiritually, the Edomites came to symbolize those who reject God's plan and choose a path of opposition to his people. In a way, the enmity of the Edomite people was an extension of Esau's rejection of his birthright and divine blessings. The territory where Esau and his descendants settled was located south of Israel. This region had been inhabited in the 2nd millennium BC, so it is believed that Esau and his descendants mingled with the original inhabitants of that land, and, over time, became the dominant group. Perhaps that is why the entire population eventually came to be known as Edomites. The Edomites organized themselves early on into tribal units and later as a nation. They had kings long before the Israelites. Overall, the land of the Edomites was mountainous, and due to a lack of rainfall, it was not considered very fertile. Nonetheless, the Edomites practiced agriculture in certain parts of their territory, especially cultivating wheat and planting vineyards and olive trees. It is believed that the Edomites also engaged in copper extraction. Archaeological excavations confirm that the region contained vast deposits of ore. These mines likely represented a vital source of wealth for Edom. Control over these natural resources allowed the Edomites to sustain their military strength by forging weapons and supplying trade with other nations, solidifying their position as a significant people. In fact, the primary economic activity of the Edomites was likely trade. The land of Edom lay along an important trade route known as the King's Highway. This road was a crucial trade route connecting Mesopotamia, Egypt, and other major economic centers of the Near East. Controlling this trade route gave the Edomites an economic advantage, as they could levy taxes and manage commercial traffic, ensuring the safety of merchant caravans passing through the region. The Edomites are also cited in extra-biblical sources. Unfortunately, as all written records of the Edomites have been lost, what is known about this people generally depends on Egyptian, Hebrew, and Assyrian sources. At their height, they managed to significantly expand their territory, advancing through Transjordan, and built several fortresses that had a method of communication between them. The topography of Edom, with its steep mountains and deep valleys, provided a natural defense against invaders. Cities like Bozrah and Sela, known later as Petra, were located in nearly inaccessible areas, surrounded by rocks and cliffs that hindered attempts at conquest. This allowed the Edomites, despite being a relatively small people, to maintain their independence and successfully defend themselves against external threats for extended periods. The religion of the Edomites, like that of many ancient peoples in the region, was influenced by the religious practices of neighboring cultures. In other words, the Edomites absorbed religious influences from the peoples with whom they interacted, including the Canaanites, Moabites, and Amorites. Initially, the Edomites worshipped a variety of gods, but they had a principal national deity associated with war and weather, possibly similar to the Baal of the Canaanites, who also governed storms and fertility. Over time, especially after their conquest by John Hyrcanus in Idumea, the remaining Edomites began to practice Jewish monotheism. As mentioned earlier, the Edomite society, over time, grew hostile toward God's people. Various biblical passages record this animosity between the two groups. One of the most notable is found in Psalms chapter 137, verse 7, where it mentions that during the Babylonian captivity, the Edomites rejoiced and incited the Babylonians to destroy Jerusalem. In other instances, the prophet Obadiah prophesied the downfall of Edom due to its violence against the Israelites. Indeed, the history of the Edomites is marked by a continuous cycle of conflict, disputes, and, ultimately, decline. Despite their strong initial position, Edom was conquered by the Nabateans and later by John Hyrcanus, as previously mentioned. Idumea, as the region would come to be known, was finally absorbed into the Roman Empire. During this period, the Edomite influence began to fade. However, their legacy overlapped in Jewish history, as Idumea became the home of Herod the Great, a king who, although of Edomite descent, identified as Jewish and sought to align himself with Roman interests. Ultimately, it is worth noting that although the Edomites ceased to exist as a distinct political entity, the story of Esau and his descendants teaches us about the consequences of the choices we make. Rejecting God's values as Esau did will always bring repercussions, not only in our personal lives, but also in our legacies. Edom serves as a reminder that the decisions we make regarding divine blessings and purposes can impact future generations. If you want to grow your knowledge of the Word of God, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share, and watch this next video on the screen. See you next time.